I thought he did spectacularly tonight. It is the best speech I've ever seen Donald Trump give. And it started out just relentlessly making the case of the substantive victories we've had in the last 3 years. And it was powerful, it was compelling, it was optimistic. And the contrast, the way congressional Democrats behaved tonight was horrible.
They wouldn't even stand up or applaud for low unemployment, or there were women wearing white, right, like the suffragettes, and they wouldn't stand up and applaud for low female unemployment.
It was one after the other where the president says we have the lowest unemployment in history. Stone cold silence. The lowest African-American unemployment in history. Stone cold silence. Lowest Hispanic unemployment in history. Stone cold silence. As you point out, lowest unemployment for women in 70 years. And you have all of these congressional women in white who just are sitting there snarling.
What do they want? What more could they ask for?
And I like that the president, he didn't just have one line about it. He had one after the other, after the other. They were all based on facts. They were all based on substance. So when the president says the lower 50% of income, the people who are struggling the most, have seen their incomes go up the most as a percentage, stone cold silence from the Democrats. When he talks about poverty, the lowest African-American poverty in history, stone cold silence.
Right.
You know, the moment in the early part of the speech that was most dismaying, the president talked about how 7 million Americans have come off of food stamps and 10 million Americans have come off of welfare. And not only did the congressional Democrats not applaud, there was hissing. I mean,
was it because you couldn't really hear that on the TV feed?
On the floor, they were hissing. And it was like some leftists in a college classroom. And I got to say, that's really twisted, and it reveals where the modern Democratic Party is. Because they're saying to people who are struggling that they want you to remain dependent. They want you to remain unemployed. They want you to... those 7 million people, the last 3 years have gotten jobs. These are real men and women. These are single moms who are suddenly now working. They're providing for their kids. They have the dignity of work, the self-respect.
Right.
And the approach of the Democrats, the congressional Democrats, they hissed that it's bad
that they're off welfare.
And it is revealing of, I think, a really cynical attitude. There was also... So one of the things the president did really well, they're what are called Lenny Stutnick moments.
Okay.
Now
what is a Lenny Stutnick moment?
So Lenny Stutnick is we see them a lot in State of the Unions where the president calls someone out in the gallery.
Okay.
And the origin of that, it was actually Ronald Reagan who invented that. It was 1982. And Reagan called out Lenny Stutnick, who had saved someone who had crashed into the Potomac. Look, Reagan was a master showman. He understood the power of it. But that was the first time in 200 years of our country's history that a president had done that. Huh. Now, every State of the Union, you have a Lenny Stutnick moment. What President Trump did with that tonight, I've never seen, and he's taken it to another level. So we saw, for example, Rush Limbaugh.
That was an amazing moment.
When the president awarded him the Medal of Freedom, right there and then, and Melania put it around his neck. Rush, I think, and I was sitting kind of right beneath where Rush was, so I was looking right up at him. He was probably, 50 feet away from me. Rush was so astonished. And look, yesterday Rush announced he has stage 4 lung cancer. And if you haven't listened to his announcement on air, it's worth listening to.
And you know Rush.
Rush is a friend. He is. I think the man is a hero, and he's a patriot. And I remember having dinner with Rush. I think it was 2015, before the whole presidential campaign had started, and we were talking about the future. And it had been 8 years of Obama, or 7 years at the time, and Rush at the time was a little, I wouldn't say discouraged, but he wasn't sure we could turn things around.
It was a discouraging era.
And I remember telling him, I said, Rush, you have 20 million Americans who listen to you every single week. Look, you and I are pretty hop daddy skippy happy that we've had 2 million downloads in 2 weeks. So look, that ain't nothing.
That's pretty good. That's not, and we did, by the way, just to mention it in passing, we didn't podcast for a few days here. Show's still at number 2, even with several days of silence.
Well, that's the sound of silence. That's the power of people wanting content. But my point that I said to Rush is, I said, look, you got 20 million people a week that listen to you. If every one of your listeners gets 2 other people to come out and vote, that's it. Just each person find 2 people in America to come vote. That's 60 million people. I remember telling Rush, with 60 million people, we can turn this country around. Donald Trump won in 2016 with 62 million votes. Those numbers were almost and Rush, it's an interesting, you and I both went on Glenn Beck this morning. We were back to back. We pounded this podcast. I think Glenn was ready to strangle us both. It was like
a full hour of plugging
his show, guys. Could you? But both Glenn and then I did Hannity earlier tonight, and both of them gave beautiful, emotional tributes to Rush, that he had blazed the field. I mean, that
he's number 1. I mean, in many ways, what we're doing right now would be unthinkable without Rush Limbaugh.
And he was the kind of lonely voice in the wilderness. And what was so powerful is there was all sorts of people across America that were sitting there going, I thought I was the only one. And he spoke for the everyman. And by the way, he speaks for the everyman. I don't want to. So my mom is a 2-time cancer survivor. Cancer is a horrific, nasty, vicious disease. And having been by my mom's side through chemo, through radiation.
Seen it up close.
It's horrible. Rush is a tough, tenacious fighter. So, I mean, I sent Rush a note yesterday that one of the things I said is, look, yours is an incredibly important voice in America, and we need you.
And it was a great moment to see Melania put it on, and obviously everybody's praying for him.
But that we've never seen in terms of a Lenny Stutney moment to actually have the medal. And Rush was blown away. There were 3 times I had tears in my eyes, and I've been to now, I think, 7 State of the Unions. I've never had tears in my eyes, and I had 3 times tonight.
What were the other 2?
That moment, Kayla Mueller, who was tortured and killed by ISIS. Her parents were there. The president did an incredible job telling her story. Yeah. Seeing them looking up, particularly as the father of daughters. I kept looking at the dad. I mean, look, and the mom, but I identified with the dad, and to know the horrific hell that their daughter went through. And the president told a great story about the Special Forces team naming their mission to take out al-Baghdadi after her birthday.
Because it ties in, look, we all know about the policy accomplishment, but the personal story is what, I agree, I had tears in my eyes the same moment.
It was beautiful and powerful. And the third time was the mom with her 2 little kids, who's a soldier, and her husband's a soldier, and he was deployed in Afghanistan, I think. And then the president said, and he's back here now.
Yeah, we'll talk about a reveal.
And the look on her face, and to see him come down, that sergeant come down the steps, and her, she was next to Melania, and the joy she expressed, her kids. I mean, seeing him hug his little girl, hug his little boy. That is a new threshold. There's never been a Lenny Stutnick moment where you actually reunite a soldier's family right in front of you. I think to the surprise of the family. That was incredible.
It was powerful. It turned everything up to 11, and I agree. I mean, it was just such an effective speech.